point, it isn't. But I think the idea of all profit, all money, and anyone that's rich is inherently bad is not true. I think it's all about how that money's come about. So profit is good if it's from a good means. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with it inherently. It's just how it's been done in the past, maybe, or. So I think I have no problems with still thinking along those lines. If we're investing, so we have to be about profit, but it has to be just profit from a good source.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Experience Podcast. My name is Tejasva or TEX, and together, you and I are going to have amazing conversations with amazing people and learn so much through our experiences. This is a listener-supported podcast, so any level of Patreon subscription or one-time donation will be accepted with a lot of gratitude and used back to making this podcast experience even greater. In today's episode, I can't wait to welcome Tom. We're going to be talking about finance and how we can use our money to create an impact in this world whilst also making a profit. But first, let's take a deep breath and close our eyes and reflect on the word money. Maybe it's a feeling, a memory, a person, an environment, or whatever else may come to mind. And whenever you're ready, you may open your eyes. Keep this thought in mind, maybe write it down on a piece of paper, because we will come back to it later in the episode. If you're comfortable, we'd love to know what you thought of, so please do share with us in the comments below, or feel free to message us. Let's begin. So welcome back to the Experience Podcast, everybody. My name is Tejasva, and today with us we have Tom from Circa 5000, previously known as Ticker. Tom is the co-founder of Circa 5000, and he's also the co-host of Impact Unpacked, which is a podcast you can find on various streaming platforms. So Tom, how are you doing, and what have you been up to these days?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me. What have I been up to these days? Mainly working.
Yeah.
You've seen we obviously just renamed and rebranded the company, which was a good 4 or 5 months worth of work on that. So that's taken up a lot of our time, but very pleased with it. Good to get it out into the world. But yeah, mainly work. It's been probably the busiest summer of my life. So
of your life, wow. So what kind of things are going on at the company?
Yeah, a lot of stuff really. I mean, we obviously the rebrand it took up a bunch of our time with a number of the key people in the team, and then that's added on to the general workload. A lot of work on the product. New features, improvements, and then just planning expansion and all the usual things. So it's normally busy, but then we've thrown on top of that this whole rename and rebrand, which is a huge piece of work. So it's just made it that bit busier. So yeah, but all good though. Good busy, but just a lot.
It's a good business. Yeah. That's really happy. That's really good to hear. Now, one thing I find really cool about your company, Tom, is that every employee I've met, even at the event or via Zoom or email, everybody genuinely seems really happy and they genuinely want to work on the product. And you can see that in the app as well. All the redesigns you've done, it's a lot sleeker and there's more pieces of information. So I think that's really cool. So let's touch a little bit on the personal side. So about your younger self. So what were you like growing up? Was this something that was always on your mind? So, money and positive change?
I would say definitely not is the answer to that. I think in terms of, wanting to work in finance or a career related to finance, that was very, very far from my thinking definitely as a child, but then even as a teenager. I actually famously, there's a conversation I once had with my mum, which was I said I would never go to university, never move to London, and never work in finance, and then I did all those two things. So I've learned as I've got older not to make these big declarations because you probably go against them. But I think for me, I wanted a career where I could earn money. I was when I was younger or when I was at university, I was money focused. I wanted to feel safe in terms of my financial life. So that's what led me to thinking about a career in the investment industry and the financial services industry, because I saw it as a way to achieve that kind of financial security and financial safety. And at the time, I didn't really care what I did and what it was in. I don't think I really had a burning passion as for a career necessarily. There was things that I liked doing, but I didn't see them as careers. For example, cooking, I'm massively into sport, but I never really saw that as a career for myself. So I kind of just did like a bit of a maths, equation in my head. I was like, look, I want a potentially prosperous career that's uncapped. And that led me to finance. And then it was really once I was in financial services that I started to think more deeply about the meaning of the work I was doing and the purpose to the work I was doing. And that led me down, a kind of route of inquiry, and I'm relatively curious as a person, and I like learning stuff. So it just led me down a path to discovering a different world within finance, and landing, this form of investing, a few years into my career.
So, you mentioned you got into finance. So you first worked at Barclays as an analyst. Was that when you were a graduate?
Yes, that was a graduate scheme, basically. So I left university. The thing that I really wanted to do, I think, when I left university was go and work in the intelligence services. I did like a criminology degree with some politics. I was relatively analytical. I liked human behavior, human study, and I thought that could be a viable career for me. It sounded interesting, obviously, because it sounds fascinating. But when I graduated in 2009, a lot of the positions were not available because of the financial crisis. So I kind of had to reassess what I wanted to do, and I moved back home after university, the Manchester area, and I started working in Manchester as at Barclays, really as in a support function in one of the local call centers, actually. And it was there that I thought, now I'm in the door, I may as well apply for the graduate scheme here. I was applying for loads of graduate schemes, doing loads of different stuff. I didn't really care. Again, I didn't really care what I did. I just wanted a promising career in almost any discipline. And my thought process was, if I get in, I'll work my way up. But that was basically my whole thought process. But whilst I was in at Barclays, I kind of spoke to people, got on that graduate scheme, and that's where I met Matt, who's the founder of the business. But we started on the same graduate scheme together.
Wow. So you've known him for a really long time then?
Yeah, we actually met on our first day of the Barclays graduate scheme. We lived together for 8 weeks in Canary Wharf while we were doing training, and they put us in accommodation together. So we became friends, close friends from that moment.
Wow. So you stayed there for a few years, then you went off to Wellington.
Yeah.
Is that the first time you discovered impact investing?
It was. And I was, so what happened with me was maybe about a year or so into Barclays, I started to really question what I was doing from a purpose point of view. I started doing crazy things, like I went vegan for 2 years. At that point, this is like 2012, 13, 14, something like that, when I went vegan. And the climate initially became a big issue for me. And then the other areas that we cover in impact investing, like, human empowerment, life essentials, housing, education, water, banking access, like the base of the pyramid stuff became a massive, passion for me. But I didn't really know how to express that within financial services. I didn't think I could, actually. My idea was that I was going to leave the industry altogether and go and work in something that was directly related to solving one of these big problems. But I couldn't really figure out what that was. And I joined Wellington Management really as a temporary stopgap to leave the industry altogether.
Wow, okay.
And it was a really great company, really, really smart people. And they think really long term because they're a private company, and they take these like 10, 15 year bets. And it's generally a really well run company. But, I didn't really care, to be honest, because I was using it as a stable ground to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And when I landed, I met a guy basically who was visiting from the San Francisco office, who told me about this idea he was working on, to launch this investment fund that would try and beat the market every year in terms of returns, but only by investing in companies that were trying to solve world problems through their business model, so through the thing that they were selling. And when he told me what he was working on, it was like someone had told me what I was going to do for the rest of my life. It was the thing that I was trying to find, basically, because I had this skill from the investment industry, from the financial services industry. I had this desire to do something with me and him, and that was both together. And I was like, that's the thing. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to do this, whether it's with him or not, I don't care, and whether it's here or somewhere else. And I just kind of forced my way into that team and his team, and it became the first impact fund that Wellington had done, one of the first impact funds in listed markets, invested in companies that are listed on the stock exchange. And yeah, that's where I got introduced to it. And it was him, a guy called Eric Rice. He kind of taught me everything I know, kind of took me under his wing. And I'm very grateful for his impact on my career. But yeah, that was the first time I got introduced to it, basically.
That's really inspiring, Tom, because I'm 22, and when we're at uni, a lot of people tell us, oh, you need to have your life sorted out when you're 22, because you need to know what you want to do and stuff. But it's really refreshing and inspiring to hear from you, Tom, that initially you were just using these things as a stepping stone, which is perfectly fine, because you gain a lot of experience, you learn so many new things, and that sort of directs you where you want to go in life.
I think I had no idea what I was going to do, really. But I knew that if I got in somewhere and applied myself, and I would always work hard and work efficient and try and do the best job possible. So, and I thought that was it. I thought that was what a career was, really. I didn't think I had to have anything deeper than that. And then once I got in somewhere, I started to, you start to develop. You're still a very young person at that time, and it's your first real foray into corporate world, or the real career. I'd had jobs before that, but jobs to earn money for part-time jobs and whatever. But I think it takes you to be in an industry sometimes to realize that there's something wrong with it, or that you can change it, or you need some actual experience in your life to then understand what you actually want to do. Some people, I know people who from the age of 14 knew what they wanted to do and still doing it now, and it's amazing. Like they had, but that's so rare. I think most people, it takes you to actually start doing something to realize that actually I don't want to do this, or I want to do this take on it, or something like that. So that's what happened with me.
Yeah. Because the insight is a lot deeper as well when you actually start working on it. Do you figure out things? Yeah, absolutely right. So any graduates listening to this, if you don't have your life figured out, do not worry.
Don't worry. Just work hard, work smart, learn stuff. It'll shake out. It'll shake out. I think a lot of the great startups, a lot of the great companies are founded by people that know those industries and know the problems with them, and then try and solve them. I think that's definitely true of financial services startups. Some companies it's not fully true of, but generally that's how ideas come about, because you're in somewhere, you see a problem, or you see a trend or whatever, and then you go and you start that, you solve that problem, that you've already seen, and you understand it very well because you're from that industry. Generally that's how people start companies.
So you end up seeing opportunities and things. Yeah. Okay. No, definitely. This is a lesson I learned really, really late as well in life, because I never wanted to be an employee as such. I'm always a very startup kind of guy as well. But I realized I need to know stuff before I do any of that, So it's really good to hear that, Tom.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll just jump in 1 second. People come to me and they speak to me, and they're very, very young, and they want to start a company and stuff like that. And my advice is, unless you have that idea nailed and it's your calling, and you're Mark Zuckerberg, and you knew from university how you were going to do it, don't rush it. You know what I mean? Like, go and learn some stuff first, and it'll come to you. I think you'll be in a way more informed position if you go and do something first.
Yeah. I think informed decisions, as you say, it's definitely. So, we were talking about impact investing, but for most of my audience, they probably don't understand what that means exactly. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Yeah, sure. It's in my mind, it's relatively simple and straightforward. It's investing for two reasons, really. One, to generate financial return. Now, we say at least market rate return, so you're not giving any returns up versus traditional investments. So at least market rate return, and you're trying to generate an intentional and measurable positive impact at the same time. So for us, that translates to investing in these great companies of the future that are building the future that we want to see. So they offer great financial return because they are companies that are addressing these huge structural problems that we need to solve as a society. And that's the returns argument as well to them. But there's also massively embedded in the DNA of the company and the thing that they sell. They're directly, solving a world problem. So affordable housing companies, education companies, and obviously the climate-related companies in there. But this spans the whole spectrum of big social environmental problems. So yeah, it's a dual-purpose investing is a buzz phrase that gets
Dual-purpose investing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because it's interesting because when I started my investing journey 2 years ago with you, and at the time I sort of realized, like Tom, I was like you when I was younger as well, because I knew I wanted a lot of money because I needed the money to eventually do what I want to do, like start a company or change the world and things like that. You sort of need money for that. There's no denying it. But every time I went to somebody and I said, "Yeah, I want to be super rich in the future," it always had this very negative connotation to it. Like people would just make a face and go, "Like, really? Do you really want to do that? Are you sure?" And so when we put the words rich, power, fame, money together, most of the time the image people will get in their head is very negative.
Yeah.
And I remember in one of the videos that you had posted, Tom, you and Matt said, in the past, people have made a lot of money by destroying the world or something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's time to change that. And this is why we at Circa 5000 are doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that was really interesting. But, you say that we can make these financial returns without compromising. We can impact the world without compromising on the financial returns. Yeah. How difficult has that been? What kind of barriers have you faced? Because I can imagine you trying to go into renewable energy and you sort of get this pressure from the other side that's not very positive. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much to say about that topic, really, because I'll address that and I'll come to something you said. Because when I was growing up, the idea of being rich and having money was only ever seen as a positive thing in the community that I'm from. Like a traditional working class kind of English community. People wanted money. Like that was the whole point. Because money's freedom and money was, something less to worry about. So it's only recently I think that in certain areas of society, that's become a tainted view of how you should view yourself. And money is not the be-all and end-all. Past a certain point, it isn't. But I think the idea of all profit, all money, and anyone that's rich is inherently bad is not true. I think it's all about how that money's come about. So profit is good if it's from a good means. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with it inherently. It's just how it's been done in the past, maybe, or. So I think I have no problems with still thinking along those lines. If we're investing, so we have to be about profit, but it has to be just profit from a good source. And there's plenty of opportunities around the world to do that. There's so many companies doing amazing things that can scale their operations and be very, very fantastic from an investment point of view. But also the product and service they're selling is inherently good for the world. Those are not conflicting things at all. Yeah. I think in the future, that's the company of the future. It's the company of today for a bunch of companies, but it's very much the company of the future. So yes, when we first started doing this, when I first started working in this part of the industry, it was like 2013, 14, something like that. So what's that now? Like, 8 years ago. So if you think this is, so now when we talk about impact investing, it's more common to talk about it now. But back then it was like, there's a bunch of hippies doing something ridiculous. It's not going to pan out. Like, it's a nice idea, but it'll never work kind of thing. And most people thought, you're going to give up return, number one. There's loads of other problems with it. It'll never get anywhere. And all we've done really, I say we as like people who've been in that part of the industry have done is just demonstrate with returns that you can do this over and over again. And it's the financial outcome of it, the profit outcome of it is as good as the investment decision that you're making. So you can't say that all impact investment strategies will earn more money than the others. Like you can't say that all non-impact strategies will earn more money than the others. It's all about the people constructing the funds, people making the investments. But you can 100% do it. The data shows it. Our data shows it. My previous, jobs show it. And it just, in the early days, it just took a lot of saying to people, well, I disagree with you and you're wrong, basically, and just staying true to it. And now they're all converts. I was actually having this conversation with somebody yesterday. The amount of people that I know who now are like megaphones for impact and this kind of investing that I knew 6-7 years ago thought it would never take off and didn't believe in it. But now it's a structural trend, and it's like clearly obvious, and it's going somewhere. Now everyone's a convert, but that's what most people are like with most things. Anything new that comes along, most people will just try and say that won't work. Don't like it. That's no good. Then 10 years later, it's obvious, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I knew it was going to work." Because if you look back and you post rationalize it, that's what people do. So, but there's always been plenty of opportunities for investments to invest this way, and it just took people to just do it for it to be proven out.
Yeah. So do you feel like when you reach out to more people and more people sort of join this movement, that it just gets a little bit easier to do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it's been true since the beginning of the first version of what we launched. If you speak to people that are not from an investment background, they get it quicker, because a lot of people who've invested before have this previous baggage that investing is this thing and not this thing. So it's harder to convert people from the industry than it is new people, because new people don't have this baggage. And now that's way easier than it was even 2 or 3 years ago. Way easier, because it's now talked about a lot. The data's there's proof. It's now not really a conversation. Now it's a case of, why wouldn't you do this? You know what I mean? It's like something's equated on every level with the other one, but this one has good outcomes for the world and this one doesn't. Well, who really would choose this one? You know what I mean? Most people, sane people, are going to choose this one if everything else is equated. And that was the job of us in the industry, and everyone else in the industry, is to just prove that you're not giving anything up. In fact, it's better. And I think we're slowly getting there.
Yeah. This whole idea of, starting something new and people being like, "Oh, it's not going to work out," or whatever. There's a quote in this spirituality thing I follow, and they say that, when you're trying to do something in a mood of service, you're trying to do something good, but it's beyond your own means, that's when empowerment will occur, because you're genuinely so passionate about doing it for a good reason that initially maybe you're gonna face so many of these barriers, like you said, but eventually it all comes.
Yeah, I think any startup, whether it's one that's inherently good or inherently not good or whatever, you're going to get 99 out of 100 people to us at the beginning, and this maybe speaks to how crazy Matt and I are as individuals, but 99 out of 100 people said, "Don't do this. This is not going to work. You should stay in your careers. You're doing well. This is a stupid risk to take. You'll never get it off the ground. You'll never acquire any customers. You'll never get 100 customers, 1,000 customers, 10,000 customers, 100,000 customers." And every single time you do one of the things someone says you couldn't do, they then go, "Oh, right, okay, maybe there's something in this." And then everyone by the end is like, "Oh, I always thought it was going to work out." So there's people that now would say to us, who I know wouldn't say to us 3 years ago when we were starting out. They'll say, "Oh, I always knew you could do it, you and Matt. But 3 years ago, you didn't believe in us, right? You believe in us now because it's happened." And that's true of every startup, basically. You have to be so convinced against the tidal wave of naysayers that I think that those naysayers put off the vast majority of people from startup companies. But you're never going to get someone go, "Oh yeah, this is an obvious and good idea, and I know you'll be a success." You just got to ignore them and stay like blindly focused on getting your thing out. If Matt and I hadn't have been convinced in our conviction that this was going somewhere, we would have stopped a million times.
Yeah, for sure. I think that takes a lot of perseverance and almost this, if you've heard of the word anti-fragile, where people are throwing stones at you and you build a palace out of it.
Matt and I are the most anti-fragile people you ever meet now, honestly.
I won't be surprised.
Yeah, we're hardened to an extreme degree, I think, now.
But what I also really like about you both is that you're very humble at the same time. I mean, you're doing such amazing things, but
Thanks.
Yeah, when I approached you at the event, like you were so friendly, and you said yes to this podcast, which I think is an honor.
Well, I think the thing is, the best thing I said at the event. I mean, we're a digital business. We don't often, always see our customers. It's not like we're running a cake stall and customers are coming to us every day and we get to meet them and do they like the cake? Can we do anything better? Those events and the calls that we do with customers, the videos that we do with customers are the best things, because you have people, absolute dream come true for me, for those events, for people coming up to me and telling me how the product has changed their lives, or they've been able to invest and never thought they could, and they've managed to buy a car or a house. Like that is like a dream come true for me. So I'm, smiling from ear to ear when I have those events. And the least I could do is give my time and speak to people, because it's absolute. Those are the best moments for me. It's not anything else. Like, oh, you got some news coverage, or you did a round of funding, or so what to an extent. We always did it for people. Like one the event we talked about, the financial inclusion being one of the key founding principles of the team. That's not a gimmick. That's just not like, oh, it sounds good, so we'll say it. Matt and I come from working class backgrounds. We got into an industry we didn't think we could get into, saw things that were wrong with the industry, and saw that our friends and families deserve to have these products in their hands, and that's who we do it for. That's who we make every decision for. So having people at those events that tell us that we're doing a good job is the best thing in the world.
Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine that feeling.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing it for the people and then you meet the people and you see them happy, I think it's a beautiful thing. Nice. So tell us a little bit about who approached who. Was it you who went to Matt, or was it Matt who came to you? And did you go to a bar?
Yeah, I mean, so Matt and I become really close friends, best friends, and Matt is very entrepreneurial as an individual. I don't necessarily think I am, and it's quite an interesting thing to say, because by definition I am. But I think I'm more like if this company didn't exist, I'd still be working in impact investing. It's my thing that I will do. And at some point, if I'm no longer needed here, or I step away in the future, I'll be back doing some form of impact investing, because I genuinely think it's the way that I can change the world for the better. And I love it. It gives me energy to be involved in it. Matt is like a true entrepreneur, where he'll see a problem with something and he'll think of a solution and think about how you would scale it, etc., etc. He's very, very creative, problem-solving thinker. So he approached me. We still have the original text message. Actually, he sent me a text message, and I remember I was on a train back home from London, and I was looking at my phone at the time it came in, and then there's a timestamp of his response, and my response was the same minute, basically. And I was like, he basically said, "Look, I think we should go and work on this idea. There's no way for us to invest our own money this way that we're doing in our day jobs. It's going to change the industry. Our friends in the industry want to use that. Let's go and work on that idea." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm in. Let's go and do it." And that was 2016. So 5 years ago, basically.
Wow.
And then it took us, best part of 2 years to then leave our jobs, because we had to figure out, regulation, custody, payments, KYC of customers. Then that's before the app design and the tech and the engineering side of things, and then getting funding to get it off the ground and stuff like that. So we were working on the side of our jobs for 2 years, mornings, evenings, weekends, and trying to get to a point where we were like, okay, we can go no further now without leaving our jobs. And then we left our jobs and went for it. But yeah, it was Matt who originally approached me, and we still have that original text message somewhere. And we sometimes at events and things, we dig it out and we put it on the screen. It's
definitely, yeah. I mean, just looking back at the first moment of how it all started, it must feel really magical now, because it's really off the ground.
Yeah, you know what? Matt and I are people that very rarely look back and very rarely get sentimental about anything that we've done, and a lot of it still doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like we've done anything yet.
Wow.
I think that's just our characters, really. We don't congratulate each other. Are we proud of what we've done? I think we've barely scratched the surface of what we think we can do. So there's no resting on our laurels. There's no, let's reminisce about the time that this happened or what that happened. It feels like a lifetime ago that text message was sent, and we've come a long way since that moment. And, if you told us in 2016 that by 2021 we'd be in this exact position now, I at that moment in time, I'd have been like, that's amazing, and that we've achieved so much. But now I'm here, I'm like, I don't think we've done anything yet. So, because every time you get to another checkpoint, you then establish another checkpoint and another checkpoint.
Of course.
That's what we're like as individuals in our day-to-day lives, though. We're just thinking ahead at all times. We don't really look back. So yeah, you can psychoanalyze that and make of that what you will, but that's just the way we are. I think it helps us with the business.
Definitely. I mean, you're always looking forward, which is good. But also talking about it from a perspective of 2 years since you've officially launched
Yeah.
Ticker, right? And you've got 150,000 users now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, I'm saying like I'm pleased moderately with where we are. The harshest critics of what we've done are Matt and me.
Yeah.
Not in a downplaying yourself or a psychologically problematic way for us at all. We're just exceptionally honest with each other, exceptionally honest with where we've come from, what we've not done right, things we have done right. I think that's the only way we'll improve and continue. Like, the next checkpoint for us is 1 million customers. That's what our head's on. So. And if you said to me at the beginning, you'd be thinking about getting to 1 million customers, I'd been like, oh, that's amazing. But it's not. It's only maybe 18 months away, something like that. If the growth rate, continues broadly in line with what we think it will. So, and then after that, it'd be 10 million, and then after that, it'd be 100 million.
Yeah, then the whole world is involved. Yeah. No, and you know what? I genuinely think it's possible because one, we're doing it for a good. We're doing it for a good purpose, and as you said, people are starting to get on board as well.
Yeah.
And you said that Circa 5000 is the only app that's doing this, especially for the first-time users.
Yeah.
And it's easy to use and all of that. So I genuinely won't be surprised if it happens even in less than 18 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I mean, you got an award as well recently, didn't you? It was the
B Corp top 5%. Yeah, that was good. I mean, again, it doesn't even semi-register with me. I mean, obviously, it's. I'm pleased for the team. Because it's a testament to all the work that they do. We've got some, like, as you touched on at the beginning, we genuinely have some amazing people in the team. I mean, that's probably of the things that I'm proud of. It's the team. It's not. And the customers and the team, those kind of things. If I'm to be proud of anything, it's those things. But yeah, it's testament to the team and the work that we do, and it shows that if you forget the investments that we make, how the company is set up, how the company's run, the policies, the things that we do for our employees, etc. That's what the B Corp is. It's about assessing us as a company, as an ethical business, upholds the highest ethical standards. And that's because that's super important to us. When you work this is another thing about why you should work somewhere first, and because you see how you like things done and don't like things done, and then if you start your own company, then you can correct all the things you don't like and take the things that you do like. And I think that's what we've done. I think that's what we try to do. Now, we just need to stay true to that when the team goes from where it is now to 100 people to 500 people to however big it gets. But yeah, I think we've made a decent start on the nature of how we work as a team and as a company.
No, that's I mean, when I first joined Ticker as a customer, I think you were like 10 people.
Yeah.
And now you have 35, 40 people?
Yeah, 35 at the moment, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about purely from a new person who wants to get into investing perspective. What is investing and how is it different from, for example, saving money?
Yeah. I suppose a simple way of thinking about it is like saving with some risk and more potential return. So I think the problem that I always had with saving in cash or saving in an instant access savings account was just you just not getting any money. And in real terms, because of inflation, it often becomes the only guaranteed way to lose money. Just keeping it in your bank account or keeping it in instant access savings. When I'd say that to people, they're like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, two things that people need to fundamentally understand, and it's difficult for people who've never worked in finance or whatever, but is inflation, the constant rise in prices of stuff, and then compound interest and the effects of compound interest. If you can understand those two things, you will understand why investing for the long term regularly is the thing to do with your money. And not keeping it in instant access savings, because you don't really get any compound interest because the interest rate either so low or non-existent, and the interest rate is often below the rate of inflation. So you are basically you are earning negative returns on your cash in real terms. So that was one of the first things I learned in the investment industry. Day one, it's like investing 101 or finance 101, and what we've tried to do with the build of our app is just incorporate some investment basics in everything that we've done, every decision that's in there. So people can try and understand, there's like 4 key basics to invest in, really. And that's, invest for the long term. So what we have at the moment is, and one of the reasons to rebrand, change our name, and change the identity and the tone of voice of the company is to really hammer this message home, is that you have this rise of the short-term trading app, which masquerades as an investing app, but trading is gambling and investing is something else. So it's really like, short-term betting is how to see those products. But they speak in investment language, so they con's too strong a word, but they convince people it's investing when it's really, really not. And 70% of people who use those platforms never make any money. So we're trying to make people think really long term. So investing should be a game of 3 years sounds long, but I've been investing now constantly for over 10 years.
Wow.
And the returns really start to add up. They really, really do, because of compound effect. You're in the market that amount of time. You're investing regularly. You do it for 10 years. Imagine what you could do for 20 years. Imagine what you did for 30 years. Now, obviously, people need money frictionally during that time period, but just the idea is that you invest long term, stay with it, invest regularly, so monthly roundups, things like that. And then don't invest in one thing once, diversify. So you have multiple investments. From a risk perspective, that's superior. And then the fourth one for us is obviously have a positive impact. So all those 4 things are just embedded into our in-app experience, because they are what we learned as the best things to do from our time in the industry. And we just translated them into the product as the base product, basically. So people don't really need to know that that's what's going on, but that's how we built it. And we used to do these events called Investing Without the BS. And we go through those 4 principles, how they're built into the app, and we have videos on them online and stuff like that. I think we need to do more of it. But investing is about taking a bit more risk with your money, with the idea of earning more returns, but it's about doing it over the long term repeatedly, not trying to buy one cryptocurrency on Tuesday, sell it on Wednesday for 1,000% return, because statistically it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Your videos that were posted on YouTube and also on the app really helped me understand what was going on. And it was only a matter of time till I saw that happen with my own money inside the app as well. So definitely, I think, when some of my friends ask me, like, how do you trust them so much? I always talk about Ticker and a Circa 5000 in a very positive light.
Yeah.
It's about, how do you trust them? Like, you can see, I literally just show them the graph. They're like, well, how's that possible?
Yeah.
Tell them it's all the idea of long-term investing. And I think definitely it's, the probability of you making that 100% return in one day is so low. It's not impossible, but it's so low. But if you start relying on that and you think it's possible again and again and again, you're in for a bumpy ride.
Yeah, that might happen to somebody once in their whole lifetime, maybe, but it's not a repeatable strategy. And a lot of people who do that, and maybe they have done that once, don't know why it's happened.
Yeah,
it was just a gamble that came off. It was red or black on roulette. It's not investing; it is gambling, and it might work for some people, but the house always wins with gambling. So
yeah, I definitely heard that one before. So you talked about you can see the returns after a period of time, obviously. How do people who are completely new to this, how can we sort of give them hope or tell them to stay consistent and persevere, especially in those initial few months when, one day they wake up and it's like, oh, it goes up by 1%, and the next day it's down by 2%. They're like, oh no, I've just lost money.
Yeah.
So how can we sort of change our mindset to go from that to think, okay, wait, I'm in it for the long run. I know, at least from a statistic point of view, that it is going to go up. How do we sort of flip that switch in the head?
Well, I think there's a few things. And one initial comment is, who are the greatest investors of all time? They're the people with the longest time horizon. So obviously Buffett being one of the most famous, he's got some of the greatest investment track record because his time horizon is infinite. So he makes long-term bets. So what happens to him in the stock market on a day-to-day basis? He doesn't even look at it. Why would he care? Because he's making an investment say for a 10-year time horizon. So it doesn't really matter what happens. Matt always says, in the long term, the short term doesn't matter. So if you have a time horizon, it's always important to start your investing at the time horizon. Now, if you're brand new to it, that might be a little bit of a difficult concept to get. But I knew when I started investing, when I was 23 is when I started working at Barclays. So you have 3 years on me, basically. You started earlier. But I knew I was investing for effectively an infinite time horizon. So even though at the beginning I was more interested in what was going on a day-to-day basis, I was very, very engaged. I soon got over that. So there's something in financial markets called a market cycle. And it's generally like 4 years. And it's like the ebb and flow of the market, basically. The expansion and the contraction. And it happens over and over again. Over time, it looks like it goes up. The stock market goes up in a straight line. But if you look at the returns, they're more like a wave, basically like that. Once you've been through one or two of them, you stop paying attention, really, to the expansion, contraction, because you know the trend is basically in a direction. So I think in the short, people who need to invest in those first few months, they're more obsessed with the daily moves in the stock market. But it's important to remember what the end goal is and what you're doing and why. The other thing that we do and that we're doing way more of is the idea of a sense of progress in the early days for customers. So progress can be the idea of you coming on the platform, you setting up a goal, and maybe that goal is in X amount of time. And then what we do in the first few months is get you to make progress in terms of your balance. So top-ups, round-ups, and you're making progress towards your end goal. And that kind of gets people away from what's happening from a percentage return of the stock market point of view, because the balance is progressing towards their goal. Because we know that that percentage return will start to stack up in time. But in the short term, you can give our customers a sense that they are making progress to their goal, which they 100% are. And it gets their focus away from just the returns of the stock market. And I'll say the third thing that we do that is obviously differentiated for us is, and we will be doing way more of it, is the sense of impact and the sense of your money doing something additional. Because what we've seen is that impact element can be the thing that keeps people in for longer, because there's a connection to what they're doing in some way, more than just financial return and risk. And that then can help them establish the behaviors that get them to a better financial services, profit, returns outcome, because they've stayed the course. The most important thing to remember with investing is staying in, basically, and staying the course. So we can give people that sense of progress and education on the principles and how to think about long term and the impact. And I think that's the way that we can, address those first few months, which are the most nervous months for someone who's new to this.
Of course. Yeah. So, there's a saying that says, the best investment is investing in yourself. So let's talk about it from a perspective of, say, someone who is 16 years old or 17 years old, even 18. So let's say they've just started their, part-time job, and now they have £10 in their hand.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think these £10 should go into something like circa 5,000, or should they, go to Amazon and buy a book that will make them a little bit more knowledgeable in finance? And then the next time they make a £10 and the next one goes to circa 5,000. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like when I sort of got aware of the fact that I know nothing about money and I know nothing about how finance works, putting that £10 deposit the first time 2 years ago was a bit of I don't even know if they're real. What if they're a scam? Because it happens, right?
Yeah.
But I bought some books. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I don't know if that's a finance book or what, but it gave me a new perspective. It gave me he keeps reinstating Robert Kiyosaki. He keeps reinstating that do it for the long term, do it for the good cause and stuff like that. Then when I put in the £10, I was like, all right, cool. Then I saw it grow. Then, you started releasing these videos from Ticker that, okay, this is how I said, okay, this is coherent. But I was wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think, Matt, where I would come down on this is not advice for people individually, but this is how I think. A piece of advice that I got from my first boss at Barclays was put your money where your mouth is and start, because then you force yourself to learn. So if you put your money to work, then you force yourself understand what's going on, and you can see what's going on. So my, not advice, but what I would do, again, if it was, 16, 17, 18-year-old me, because you have to be 18 to open an account,
Right.
like 5,000, but would be to just start investing with that £10. You read as you go, but there's nothing like having your money on the table that forces you to learn, basically. So when I first started investing, I made an investment first week of being at Barclays, and it was a terrible investment. I didn't really know what I was doing. But because of that, it forced me to really scrutinize how to do it properly. It made me learn way more, way quicker. And, you can read all the theory you want, but and it's like I think it's the Mike Tyson quote: everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. That's basically what happens with investing. Like, you can read all. I mean, I've done the CFA. I've done the qualifications that you needed to do theoretically, but it's not real world. You're reading theory. Start doing it. Basically, I think that's the best advice I got, and I would extend it to people, which probably feels uncomfortable, but it should feel uncomfortable when you're doing something new. Start small, but start with enough that it means something, and learn. Force yourself to learn.
100%. Definitely, I relate to this as well, because those £10 sat there for a month, I think, before I put in the next one. And I think, Tom, you also talk about investing without the emotion. So that's why you created things like roundups, and which I think definitely are something that contribute to the amount and the impact that's going on in the world. So that's really amazing. Now, if people want to get the Circa 5000 app, please don't hesitate to contact me or Tom or any of the Ticker team. I can leave some links. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a few links in the description if you want anything. Any final words that you'd like to share, Tom?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think the audience is? And I'll give you some words of a partial wisdom from an older person.
I think most of my audience will be people my age, so around mid-20s, young 20s, even younger than me, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're listening to something like this, and the fact that yourself, you're already investing, you're way ahead of where I was, at that point. Be curious, work hard, and take risks. When you're young, you can take risks. So yeah, that's my advice. Be curious, take risks.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. And as always, if you again, like I said, if you do want to start investing and you want to do some research, please do approach us, and hopefully we can guide you in the right direction. I'm not an expert investor, but I can share my own experiences and how it's helped me. So, Tom, thank you so much for coming on, and it's been an honor to have you.
Yeah.
And as always, thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thanks. You too, man.
Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We really hope you learned something new. Before we end, let's take another moment to reflect on the word money. After this, think about what changed between your feelings before and after the episode. This podcast was created so we can listen to all our stories and learn from each other, because there's so much that we all experience in our individual journeys. Being able to have even a small glimpse of someone's journey can add so much perspective to our lives, help us grow together, and be able to better understand ourselves and each other. Despite all our differences, there's so much more that we have in common. This is a listener-supported podcast, so any level of Patreon subscription or one-time donation will be accepted with a lot of gratitude and used back to making this podcast experience even greater. The different subscriptions can be found on my Patreon page, which will be linked in the description. This was recorded during COVID times with little to no professional equipment, so the quality may sometimes vary. We apologize for this inconvenience, but despite that, we hope you were able to connect with the message of this episode. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week. Take care.